and I'm sharing for you that Max's opportunity isn't down the road. His fight is now. His championship opportunity isn't potentially in the future with potentially Ilia Topuria. His championship opportunity is right now for the BMF against Justin Gaethje. But it's going to be a close fight. It's going to be a hard fight. It's going to be a long fight. But it appears that maybe Max doesn't know, and a lot of athletes suffer from this. It appears that Max possibly does not know just how good he is.
Justin Gaethje, the phoenix of the UFC lightweight division. 3 times he found himself in situations where everyone around thought he was done. But each time there was a miraculous resurrection, and the highlight ended up on top. Now, Justin is on a streak of 2 victories, and a new title shot is just around the corner. But before that, he faces an incredibly tough challenge. The Hawaiian God of War is moving up to 155 pounds for the 2nd time to fight for the belt and solidify his already great legacy. Will he be able to stop Gaethje, or is it Justin's time? Let's find out. Friends, today's video will be dedicated to the technical breakdown of the fight between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. Please don't forget about the likes, comments with 4 words, and subscribe to the channel. Here we go. In the last few years, the career of each of the guys has not been particularly stable. But in the case of Justin Gaethje, the situation is reminiscent of a roller coaster. For the first time, Highlight fought in the UFC Octagon in 2017, defeating Michael Johnson, but then lost 2 fights in a row and was on the verge of being dropped from the top. To stay in the game, the American seriously worked on his style, making it less chaotic, and the result did not take too long. Justin racked up a streak of 4 knockouts and became the first man in the last 8 years to stop the lightweight monster Tony Ferguson. Highlight's efforts didn't go unnoticed, and he got a chance to contest the belt of the Dagestani Eagle. But the fight wasn't competitive. Khabib needed less than 10 minutes to corner Gaethje and finish him on the ground. After such a devastating loss to the champion, Justin took a year to recover and then won a bloody brawl against Michael Chandler and found himself in the status of the main contender again. This time, the belt was on the waist of the Brazilian version of El Cucuy, Charles Oliveira, and he dealt with Justin even faster than Nurmagomedov. In the first round, Do Bronx knocked down the elite puncher and then strangled him. After the humiliation from the Brazilian, Gaethje disappeared for almost a year, and then suddenly announced his return against the young blood of the division, Rafael Fiziev. It seemed that Justin was supposed to be fed to the spectacular kicker, but Gaethje endured the initial onslaught, then beat Rafa up and won by decision. The most recent appearance of Highlight in the cage was last summer when he had a rematch against Dustin Poirier. Many years ago, the Diamond stopped the young Gaethje, but since then, everything has changed significantly. An improved Justin returned the favor and ripped the Louisiana native's head with a high kick, then snatched the BMF belt that was up for grabs and started waiting for new challenges. Gaethje probably expected an immediate title shot, but the rising lightweight Max Holloway had other plans in this regard. For the last few years, the Blessed has been doing nothing but clearing out the featherweight division of hungry contenders, as if he was still the champion. But in reality, everything is a bit more complicated. In 2019, Max had his 4th defense of the featherweight championship, and the contender was some Australian shorty, Alex Volkanovski. Everyone expected Max to once again school someone in MMA, but it didn't work out. The Great easily outplayed the Hawaiian in the stand-up and took his belt by a unanimous decision. Considering Holloway's huge merits, he was rightfully given a rematch with Alex, and this time, the Blessed looked much better. In my opinion, Max took 3 rounds out of 5, but the experts leaned towards Volk, and he remained on top. Since that day, Holloway has been given the status of the Shadow Champion, as he destroyed half of the contenders himself. Calvin Cotter,
Turn it up! Turn it up! I'm the best boxer you see, baby! Hook right hand!
Oh my goodness!
I'm the best boxer!
Yair Rodriguez, Arnold Allen, all of them were dismantled by the Hawaiian cardio machine. In between beating the top fighters, Max got a third chance against Volkanovski, but this time he suffered a crushing defeat and ultimately lost hope of becoming a champ in the era of the Australian. Just like Gaethje, the last time the Blessed pleased fans with his appearance was in 2023 when he finished the career of the Korean Zombie with a knockout in the third round. Since then, Max has been looking for a worthy opponent and unexpectedly found it in the face of Justin Gaethje, a victory over whom will open new doors for him. Let's discuss the fighter's technique. Technique. First, let's look at the former featherweight king, Max Holloway. At the dawn of his career and in the first fights for the title, the Blessed was a bold guy, full of opportunistic spirit and the desire to fight to the death. His credo was to deliver twice as many strikes to the opponent's head as he received in return, and everything else wasn't that important. Fighting in such a crazy manner, Holloway became a champion, but then Alexander Volkanovski came along and showed that sometimes great boxing, cardio, and a strong chin are not enough. Max learned his lesson and began to improve. Footwork and head movement of the Blessed were the first things to undergo changes. From a guy who loved to move exclusively in a straight line, which increased the chance of running into a strike, he turned into a master of dives, dodges, and cutting angles. All the new tricks were organically intertwined with the basic skills, and the love for frequent stance switches made the style of the former champion even more unpredictable. The opponent can never be sure what Holloway will do next. Switch to southpaw, make a 180-degree pivot, or spin for a kick. The improved footwork was complemented with an incredible distance control. Max exquisitely feels the space of the cage and often stays just a couple of centimeters away from the opponent's strike, then attacks himself. The Hawaiian has an incredible rich arsenal of strikes, starting with 1-2s or straight shots to the body and ending with elbows or knees from the clinch. While before he focused more on boxing, now he constantly adds middle or high kicks to his combinations, not forgetting about anti-offensive strikes, for example, side kicks. As for wrestling, the Hawaiian has a solid defense, and he can go for a takedown himself only if the opponent is a complete rookie in terms of wrestling. Hello, Yair Rodriguez. And what can Justin do? Like Max, Highlight has not been fighting in a do-or-die style for several years, preferring technical boxing or kickboxing matches, where Gaethje himself often takes on the role of a feigned second number. Why do I call it exactly that? The fact is that the American does not always seek to get his opponent out of position and then punish him, as do counterpunchers in the usual sense. Instead, Justin likes to let the opponent get closer and, without waiting for an attack, immediately starts his own barrage. Sometimes, Highlight gets tired of waiting and abruptly shortens the distance with strikes, but then retreats and, like a spider, spreads nets, waiting for the prey. On paper, the tactic looks very simple and seems that every opponent can resist it, but Gaethje has a set of skills that make the task much more complicated for the opponents. First of all, Highlight has a very heavy punch with both hands and high speed, which already makes him much more dangerous. Even a clumsy and looping strike can knock out or at least cause serious damage, as seen by the faces of those beaten by Gaethje. Secondly, Justin's opponents always need to keep his low kicks in mind, with which he blasts the fighters who pressure him. Even if a series of lows does not injure the leg, the accumulated damage can slow them down significantly, which will simplify the task for the American. Also, do not forget about the lightweight's resilience. Without it, a tactic that implies risk and missed strikes would be absolutely ineffective, and Gaethje would get knocked out even before he goes forward himself. Wrestling for this guy performs the same functions as for Holloway, with the only difference being that Max showed himself to be a lot more effective on the ground. Endurance and mentality. Since the guys are fighting for the belt, the fight implies 5 rounds, and this is incredible news for Max Holloway, whose name has long become synonymous with the phrase championship distance. The Hawaiian has always been famous for being able to push the pace with each round and give his maximum in the last minutes when the opponent is already standing with his tongue on his shoulder. Now, when the style of the Blessed has changed, this feature is not so noticeable. But he is still the king of 5 rounds and will not let anyone on the UFC roster outwork him. Justin's cardio raises much more questions. In those fights where Highlight ran the show and did not let the opponents perform at their best, there were no questions about his endurance. However, if you take away Gaethje's hope of victory, he immediately begins to suffocate. In general, I would rate the American stamina at 6, maybe 7 out of 10. But in a confrontation with the monster of championship fights, this is definitely not enough. There are no questions about the fighter's mental readiness. Justin is on a winning streak over high-ranked guys, and until recently, he was not going to take on any challenges except for the title fight. However, a spot on the main card of UFC 300, good money, and an opponent with a name made this guy change his mind. Holloway's motivation is exactly the same. Max could stay in his native featherweight division and wait for the end of the title showdowns between Topuria and Volk, but decided not to spare himself and once again write his name down in the history of MMA, performing at the anniversary event. In addition, a victory over Gaethje promises the Hawaiian the status of a contender, which is probably of most interest to him. Since the motives and goals of the guys are the same, let's rate the psychological aspect as 50-50. Conclusions. Let's move on to the most difficult and, at the same time, interesting part of the breakdown. Many fans are convinced that Max has too few chances to stop Gaethje, largely because of the difference in weight. When in 2019, Holloway moved up to the lightweight division and fought against Poirier, the lack of size was noticeable and gave Dustin a significant advantage. So people are afraid that history is going to repeat itself and bet on Highlight. But this is rash. As we can see from the latest photos, the Blessed made the right conclusions, so this time he went through a more serious and lengthy preparation, adding muscle mass to be ready for everything. Yes, he still won't be as strong and powerful as Gaethje, but the American definitely won't be able to simply crush the former champion with size. If the question of size is not so acute, then who has more chances? In my opinion, technically the Hawaiian is a much more versatile and skilled fighter than Justin. Though Gaethje improved his footwork, defense, and now can attack with a jab, all of this is not enough to outshoot the new version of Holloway. Max has an incredibly developed sense of distance and a noticeable superiority in speed, so he will be able to easily dodge many of Justin's attacks and throw middle kicks with straight strikes in response, as was the case in the fight with Arnold Allen. Why do I compare Highlight and Almighty? The fact is that the guys are quite similar in build. Strong, stocky, with broad shoulders and ability to explode. Gaethje, of course, is noticeably taller, but at the same time, the reach of his arms is exactly the same as that of Arnold. So it will be quite easy for Max to establish the necessary boundaries. As for unexpected strikes, such as high kicks or some new tricks, the Hawaiian's reaction is quite good, and he can swiftly dive under strikes as well as engage in a short clinch with subsequent knees. Even if Holloway misses something, I am almost 100% sure that he will not fall. This guy has never been knocked down throughout his incredibly long career, although he has taken such big shots that it becomes scary. Sooner or later, his titanium chin will fail, but so far, we have no reasons to talk about it, so I don't really believe in a knockout. Another factor on Max's side is age. Gaethje is 35 years old, and he definitely won't get any better. And how long he will be able to stay at the current level is not clear yet. Perhaps it is Holloway who is destined to show MMA fans that Justin's time has come to an end. What's the bottom line? The balance of power before the fight tells us that Gaethje is a clear favorite, and given the recent fights, this is probably fair. But I would believe more in Max. In a 5-round distance, his style combined with speed and an unbreakable jaw will become a huge problem for Justin, and I'm not sure that Highlight and Trevor Whitman will come up with a solution. I give 60% for the victory of the Hawaiian and a good 40% for the success of the most spectacular knockout artist. But again, everything said above is my personal opinion, and I express it based on my beliefs. Okay, guys, now I'm waiting for your opinion in the comments. Who will win? Let's have a discussion.